Everybody. It's what is it? It's Wednesday here. We're expecting snow, so I'm hoping for a snow day tomorrow. But trying to get ahead of my work, so you have me during daylight, not late on a Sunday night in the dark. So I thought the chapters this week were all really interesting and helpful. It was really nice to see some of the connections between the two books. I know they both really focused a lot on like the visual elements of theater and sound, and kind of creating that plan for sets. So it was really helpful to kind of have that reinforced in both books. I guess I'll start off with music. So the chapter about music, at first I was excited because I'm a musical theater person and I thought it was going to have to do with musicals. So far, none of the classes really have. But it was more about the sound effects and use of sound in shows, which I thought was actually super helpful. As I've moved from doing lots of junior and kids shows to more like full Broadway shows or more adult versions of shows, I found that less has been available to me. So when I was doing tons of kids shows with MTI, they kind of give you every single thing you need. They idiot proof the show. And now as I'm moving on and doing high school shows and adult productions, that stuff really isn't available. Even with MTI, I'm doing Mean Girls High School this summer, and I just got the resources, and there's just so much less as soon as you shift from those junior shows. So I definitely have found the need to source more of my sound effects and think more about sound than I had to previously. Previously I would, end up with a random moment where I'm like, oh, we could use a sound here, and I'd pull something up off of YouTube. But I'm definitely finding the need to source sound. I'm lucky that with my theater company, I have my lighting engineer sits with the sound guy, and he's kind of enjoys that sort of thing, so he finds them usually and gives me some options. And then at my school, the guy that does mics for us usually will find any sound effects I need. So occasionally I have to find them. Usually other people do, but I do find like I hear that hole in the show when there is a sound effect that maybe isn't utilized or isn't there, or sometimes there's too much noise. So it's really that balance of like not enough and too much. Sometimes not having any sound at all, having a quiet theater can be so powerful. And I know the book talked about that that as well, and definitely the struggle with that. I know I did Frozen over the summer, and we had this really powerful moment where Elsa realizes that Anna's been frozen, and we had it blocked so that the ice dancers kind of drop to her feet, and suddenly you see her there frozen, and in the middle of it a baby started crying, and what are you gonna do? But it's just kind of utilizing. I wanted that moment of silence and power, and then suddenly you hear a baby cry. So it is hard to control that in a theater, and certainly there was mention of just the noises that come with theater. I know my theater is 100 years old, so it certainly has its own quirks to it. So really knowing your building and knowing what works best is so important. I'm going to move on to the visual elements because that was also a big focus. I am an artistic person. I've always been an artistic person, but I'm not like an art person. I don't study art. I took some art classes, but expressionism and realism, like this was a nice little revisit for me because that's just not part of my vocabulary. And it was nice for me to be able to reflect on some of the different structures that people might use and some of the different artistic, avenues that you might explore when designing a set. And that was certainly really interesting to read about. I've fallen into set design recently. I always would kind of give my set person kind of a sketch of what I was thinking about or the pieces that I absolutely needed to have, and then they would kind of go with it from there. But at my theater company, we lost our set designer 3 productions ago, and just my husband builds the sets, and it was sort of last moment, so I just sort of stepped in and designed, and he built, and it worked well. So we've just kind of continued with that, although I don't recommend directing and designing the sets and then being the one to boss your husband around while he's building them. I don't recommend that, but it's worked for us. So, so far so good. But, there really are so many pieces to consider. When I wasn't the set designer and someone else was doing it, they would run things by lighting, and now I'm finding like I'm working on a set for Mean Girls right now, and I have like sparkly pink wallpaper, so I had to touch base with my lighting designer to make sure that wasn't going to throw things off and make sure that was something he could work around. So really just sort of thinking about all of those pieces. No one person can do everything, but making sure that you're really communicating and that everybody knows what that sort of director's vision is, so that you can connect all the dots and connect all the pieces, is just so important. And the book spoke spoke about the ground plan, which is definitely critical, not only for a director or set designer, but also just for the people involved in a show. Like, they need to know where these obstacles are going to be, where's the house going to be, where are the buildings, where are things represented, so that way they can work around it and act around it. So, I always find when I'm doing blocking as a director, even though I might not give them all the details about the sets, I give them that like kind of basic ground plan, that basic structure. I always have it sort of either drawn out on computer and I can show it to them, or it's sketched in the top of my, at the top of each scene in my script. So I can sort of show them what that stage is going to look like. So that way they know what to expect. And that really saves a lot of room as you transfer into Tech Week, where suddenly you have the sets there. If they're already aware of what's going to be there, then there's a lot less adjustments that need to be made. So I think overall the chapters were really useful. Covered certainly a lot of groundwork. The chapter in Hey Kids definitely covered a lot. It was like a quick little dipstick into each element of like visual theater, but definitely some good reminders, and I think would have been great for me if I was a new director at the time reading it. Have a great week, guys, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.